Good morning, Britain. It's back to Plan A as the government begins to ease COVID restrictions.
73 seconds.
By COVID.
It is unusual.
This morning, some will be pleased that the restrictions are being lifted. Others will think this is a political move, not a health-driven move. This is a political move not to save lives, but to save Boris Johnson's skin. Ruth, what do you think? Even though there was an open goal for Sir Keir Starmer, and there was a defection from the Tory party over to Labour, and a senior ex-minister, the former Brexit secretary, David Davis, stood up and said this, very historic phrase about, for God's sake, go, man. A lot of people saying the atmosphere actually amongst the backbenches is kind of calmed down. There are suggestions that some people might even have withdrawn their letters to the 1922 committee calling on him to go. What do you get the sense, Ruth, that whatever Boris Johnson faces, and however bad that might have been for other politicians, somehow Boris Johnson manages to bounce back? And that's, the Labour are so far ahead, in the polls as a result of this. The key thing will be people who will think, this is a distraction. We want to see what you're going to do for the country. So even though as sort of political analysts, we think, well, all this policy stuff over, the migrant crisis and the BBC licence fee, that's just in order to get us all to think about something else. Real voters will think, well, actually, we do want to see real... Rachel Reeves. Ruth, how do you assess the political temperature this morning?
I think that was
been very critical of Boris Johnson. You were just... sort of very admiring of Rachel Reeves. Are you...
I think it was a smart...
You make an engagement ring that's going to hurt to take off. Well, it's easier for people to access the music.
It's much...
Duet with Whitney Houston.
Good morning, it's just gone 6 o'clock. Welcome to the programme.
Imagine being a Leicester fan this morning.
No.
Oh, look, we know about disappointment in the final
We've
couple
been there when
minutes.
you think you're over the line and it all goes
wrong.
wrong.
But they were 2-1 up.
Yes.
And then how many seconds did it take?
Not just come back and get 1 point, but to nick all the points.
All the points in the final is an absolutely remarkable and I suspect historic.
Yeah, we're led to believe that it may
come back in Premier League history.
Much as it pains me, obviously, as a West Ham fan, to sort of celebrate a Spurs turnaround, but it's the sporting moment, isn't it? That last gasp winner when everything's been against you.
Exactly.
And as you say, for Leicester fans this morning, so close to those points.
As Robbie Savage says, that's why it's the greatest game in the world. Did Boris Johnson stage a comeback of his own yesterday in Prime Minister's Questions? He looked down, but I'm not sure he was out. I'm
not sure he had 73 seconds of his leadership left, did he? He's sort of not quite in added on time yet.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions, it felt like he was so mortally wounded. We talked yesterday morning about the fact that Beth Rigby interview, 16 excruciating minutes, where she basically lectured him on breaking the rules, and particularly that humiliating apology that they had to make over holding parties at Downing Street on the eve of the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral. Absolutely excruciating.
Well, at least somebody was telling him what the rules were, because clearly, as he complained, Lara O'Brien said some of those briefings that we had that were every night for a long time, that would be great, because
who was hosting
he'd have got a really good sense of what was going on. I can't remember.
Was it the Prime Minister?
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was the Prime Minister. But he didn't know what his own rules were and ended up breaking them. But yesterday, he came out fighting.
Do you think he was swinging hard?
Yes, he was. There was a defection, of course. An MP from the Tories crossed the House to go over and sit with Labour. And David Davis, a former cabinet minister, really put the boot in. Let's have a look.
I guess the question is, of all the people that have made claims on Boris Johnson leaving, that have stood up and said it's time for him to go...
He's the most senior.
He is the most senior. He's been there, seen it and done it, hasn't he?
But like Spurs, PM is fighting back. The Times this morning, PM fights on as plotters pull back from the brink. And, of course, is it the right time to change the restrictions, or has he done it to appease the rebels within his own backbenches? Today, the news is all about the fact that we are going to try and live with COVID.
There's that point, though, the analogy of the football point, which is, you know, when the team is up against it, the letters going into 2022, is that the rest of the Tory MPs saying, hold on, let's galvanise together, let's work out how we can get everything back on track, support the Prime Minister and get the win that we need?
Well, we'll be talking to Ruth Davidson about that very shortly. But our main news, of course, this morning is the changes to COVID restrictions in England. Students in secondary schools in England no longer have to wear face coverings in classrooms from this morning. Guidance for people to work from home has also been dropped.
Yeah, ministers say the Omicron wave has peaked. They have pledged to abolish almost every existing COVID restriction in the coming weeks, including the legal requirement for people to self-isolate if they test positive. Hi there, it's 7:25. Good to have you with us this morning. So, with the Prime Minister's future hanging by a